If you're staying for the seed session, please come and take a seat.
Should I go and give a shout outside for it?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're just going to call outside to see if anyone else wants to join us. So yeah, I'll just say a general welcome and wait for Kate and anyone else who might actually choose to join us. A few more people coming. Okay, great. Yeah, I guess so.
So I think it's that one.
That one is on. I'm trying not to. Okay, so I think we should start, seeing as you're here and it's time. So I was kindly asked by Phil, who I've just met today in person, to see if we could have a panel on seed and why seed is so important, and seed particularly looking at inspiration for the North and what's happening, but of course, you know, set within the context of why seed is important, and you know, what is happening, and also what we really need to think about and do. So there will be a call to action for you today as well, and yeah, hopefully lots of inspiration. So yeah, I can't really take much credit for really for organising the panel, because it's changed shape quite a bit, and hopefully we've ended up with some really important key things to think about, as well as some information what's happening. So we have the incredibly inspiring Kate McAvoy from Real Seeds. I say that as someone who's just starting on their own seed saving journey, really. And we have Liz from GM Freeze. And so I don't want to steal Kate's thunder, but looking for threads between somebody who is producing open pollinated seed and really pioneering that with Real Seeds, you know, as a small company, and somebody who's campaigning on, you know, the topic of gene editing. I was in the interesting position of looking at how we weave these together. So I suppose the main thing is really, what is our inspiration? Why do we need to be saving seed? And why do we need, as farmers and growers, to be saving seed, and really inspiring everyone else to do the same at home, in allotments, wherever they are. But you know, we have Kate, who can talk from the market garden farmer scale seed production, and like I say, really pioneering, but there's so much work to do. So I just hope that this session inspires people to really think about their next step, and I think part of that will be a call to action. So I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm Charlie from Gaia Foundation Seed Sovereignty Campaign, and the bit I'll talk about is what we're actually doing to support seed networks in Northern England. So Phil asked me to make sure it had a northern flavour, and that's what I'll talk about. So over to you, Kate.
So yeah, thank you very much, Charlie. And yeah, I guess I'm Kate. I'm from Real Seeds. I grow vegetable seeds for a living, essentially for home gardeners, all open pollinated, and we grow organic seeds. But really what I want to do in these few minutes that I'm just talking today is to make you think about seeds as something that should not be taken for granted. I think that really commonly within the organic movement, within market gardeners, within everybody, seeds are seen as an external input. They're not seen as something, they're seen as somebody else's problem, which I quote from the late great Douglas Adams, just because I like Douglas Adams. They are somebody else's problem. You know, there is this expectation that the seeds that you need as growers, that gardening seeds, they'll be available. They'll be relatively cheap, there will be good supply of varieties, they'll have good germination, and that you should just buy them in. That it's too skilled a job to produce them yourself, maybe it uses too much land. Now, what I would like to compare this with is fertility. I don't think any of you would just consider thinking of fertility to your land as somebody else's problem and something you just brought in. Even if obviously people do bring in fertility, we just had a session talking about bringing in manures and so on, but everyone thinks about it. They don't just outsource it. And I would point out that composting is very skilled. It's something you really need to know how to do. And it takes up a lot of space. I have this problem always. I've got 2.5 acres that I grow on, we've got a bit of other land. And it's a big issue, you know, moving stuff around or whatever. So just to say, seeds are too skilled, seeds take up too much space, we haven't got the time, we can't think about it. I would urge you not to just dismiss them in that way. I mean, in a way, it's the thing we've been sold, isn't it? It's worth pointing out that the commercial seed trade has only actually been in existence for around about 150 years. And we've been doing agriculture, and I'm going to look here at someone out there who's going to tell me this because I can never remember, but it's at least 5,000 years, probably more. Now, thank you, 10,000 years, there we are, like this. Now, I'm of the opinion that those of you in this room, I hope, are no less intelligent, educated, able than someone who was a grower 500 years ago. You have the advantage of loads of sources of information. You may not have these skills in your community, but we have the internet, we have books, we have all these things. So this is readily available to us. And if you think that 500 years ago, you would have had to get your seeds, you'd have either had to grow them yourself or get them within your community. It's not impossible. You know, just remember that when you're thinking about it and dismissing it. This is a very new thing. In the same way that conventional agriculture is a tiny fragment of human history, buying in seeds is a tiny fragment of human history, and it's quite likely it will not be the case in the future. So, real seeds, we have spent 20 odd years banging on to people about the fragility of the seed system and the problems with the seed system and saying, don't think of it as someone else's problem. Well, and thinking, you know, seed sovereignty is a fundamental part of food sovereignty. Without seeds, you have no food. So anyway, we came to March 2020. That pink mountain suddenly became very, very, very obvious to everybody. You know, not only that, they were standing on it and looking over the edge of a cliff because people were coming to plant their seeds, and if they didn't already have them, they couldn't buy them. There we are, you know, we shut down King's, Tamar, all these people were overwhelmed with demand, we couldn't meet it. We didn't have enough seeds, we had to do social distancing, the postal system wasn't working. That, you know, it was a sudden illustration. I did say to a lot of people, I've spent 20 years banging on about seed sovereignty and why it's a problem. And actually, I didn't want an international pandemic to make the point for me. But like it did to all of you when those, you know, when those shelves in Tesco's were empty and people were banging on the door of your box scheme, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's a sudden illustration of what has gone wrong. Now, obviously, partly it was a temporary glitch, not helped by Brexit, which made it very, very difficult to import seeds all of a sudden. If you look at the date up there, 11th of February 2021, that's quite a long time after the pandemic. Last spring, we had the same problem again, hadn't gone away. It's come back more or less to normal now. Maybe in July this year, we're feeling like things are more normal, more like they were before the pandemic, still up, but dealable with. But the systemic problems of production have not gone away. They are very much there, and they are increasing. And that is not about Brexit, and it is not just about the pandemic. I mean, we've seen this, we're a seed company, we grow quite a bit of our own seed, but we do also buy in a lot of seed. And I would say over the last 10 years, it has been getting harder to find the right, good, open pollinated seed that we need. Even just recently, we've got an email from a supplier in the States, I think Seed Savers Exchange, corn production. really struggling with organic open pollinated corn production. Some of the reasons, unfortunately, is going to come back to what Liz is going to say. Seed is being further and further pushed to low wage economies. Seed that we would have bought from the States, then went to production in Mexico. Now it's produced in China. That is no reflection on Chinese agriculture. Obviously, the Chinese have had an amazing system of agriculture for millennia, but it's more divorced from the people who are ordering it. The quality controls are not there. The climate is different. All this stuff, it's not improving. Obviously, there's lots of positive things happening. I have to give a shout out here, obviously, to this Heritage Seed Library and Garden Organic was Henry Doubleday, who have been working on this for, someone will tell me the exact time, at least 30 years. When did the Heritage Seed Library start? Long time. They have done amazing things in terms of raising public consciousness, getting knowledge out there to gardeners. I cannot stress too highly that we would be in so much of a worse position were it not for Garden Organic and the Heritage Seed Library. There's obviously quite a lot of new small seed companies that are starting up. There's a seed cooperative, who aren't that small, who are doing great things. There's Vital Seeds. So that is happening. But, the seed cooperative, Vital Seeds, we don't even do commercial growers, we do home gardeners. We cannot solve this problem on our own. We are too small. We are a very small number of people. It needs much wider response. There's also obviously the immediate risk to us as growers, as seed producers, as market gardeners of gene editing, which Liz is going to talk about. This is a real problem. We have friends in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, where they do a lot of organic, where it's specializes in organic seed production, specialty seed production. They have been fighting planting of GM sugar beet and GM canola next to their crops for over 10 years now. It's a major, major issue, and one I cannot stress how problematic it is because of obviously contamination, clearly. On the other side, it's really important to talk about the positive steps we can take. And just to remember that even if every one of you in this room grew one seed crop and started sharing it with your neighbours, that would make a real difference. And Charlie is going to talk a lot more about that, about how you get those skills, how you get that experience. And it can be a commercially good move to make as well. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop there because I've done more than my 10 minutes, and I'm going to hand over to Liz, who is going to tell us what we can do about all of these terrible things.
Well, thanks, Kate. We didn't do a tech check, so that sounds like it sounds all right to everybody. And hello to people online. I need to just change slides. It's all right. No, we need to be slightly more technical. Bear with us. We need to do that. Do that. There we go. Slick operation it is. I have to say, while we're doing this, I'm going to say it is so exciting to be in an actual room with real people, and especially this room. I am going to lay claim to being the most local person at this conference because I live on that street there, and I co-own this building. I have community shares in this community-owned space, so I feel like I'm welcoming you all into a little bit of my life, which is really lovely, and I hope you're enjoying this gorgeous space. So yes, hi, that's me. I'm Liz O'Neill. I'm the director of GM Freeze, which is the UK umbrella campaign challenging the use of genetic engineering in food and farming. So we have quite a wide range of members. In fact, Real Seeds are members, and I think there's some other members probably in the room. I will come back to that later. That is one of the things you can do, is join us. But I've just got a few slides that I'll talk around. So you've got some stuff to look at. And really what I want to cover is kind of these three really key points. Gene editing is GM with better PR. And, despite what that very well-funded PR would have us believe, that's a really fundamental concept that people need to grasp. The second point is that government policy on GM is a direct threat to agroecology and seed sovereignty. The law is going to change very, very soon. It's just the first step, but it's the first step in a very powerful journey that could make a lot of what we're talking about very difficult to achieve. a lot of what's been talked about at this conference, this event, what a lot of you are doing. And then the third point is that it's time to get involved. I am going to ask you to do things. So I'll just do the clicky thing. Hopefully that will work. Yes. So that first point, so it's slightly distracting because the laptop shows different things. But that first point, that gene editing is GM with better PR. Now, the first thing is that the European Court of Justice said so in 2018. They didn't say the better PR, but they said that gene editing is GM in 2018. And they said so after a 2-year review of the science. And there were a lot of people lobbying them, trying to get the opposite decision. So they made a very thorough investigation before making that judgment in 2018. The reasons that gene editing is GM is, it disrupts DNA in the lab, just like all the other GM techniques. And I think I will get a little bit technical here because also talking about language that we use. GM, genetic modification, GMO, they're legal jargon. And we hear this phrase, oh, we've been modifying genes for millennia. And, that language is used to influence the debate. The term genetic modification has a meaning in law. That meaning in law includes gene editing, end of. So just don't tolerate that kind of nonsense. And language has been being used for several years, ever since these new techniques started becoming available. They've been playing with the language. So the GM companies, first of all, they talked about new breeding techniques. They've also liked to use the term precision technology. And I think my first kind of ask is be aware of that stuff, be aware of how this is being portrayed. At the end of the day, genetic modification means changing the DNA of an organism in the lab without having sex. There's no sexual reproduction involved. And in doing that, you are overpowering rather than supporting nature. And that's where it all starts going wrong. So the term gene editing or genome editing does have some scientific validity in that it's a subset of GM techniques. And that subset are very new. They are less focused on adding in new genes and more focused on, changing the DNA that's already there, but that doesn't make them any less disruptive. In fact, if anything, they are more game-changing. This CRISPR-Cas technique, which you may have heard of, works by damaging the DNA, deliberately damaging the DNA of an organism, and then trying to control how the cell repairs that wound. So, that is incredibly disruptive. So that there's a whole issue there around the fact that you are disrupting a complex natural process. You also need to think about the applications. So most applications are using, several different techniques, and often they actually do have a transgenic step. So transgenesis is when you add DNA from another species. That was what the first generation of GM was very focused on. Lots and lots of this, supposedly genome editing stuff also includes that step. So, it is all quite complex. And when you start disrupting DNA, lots of things can go wrong. You get off-target DNA changes, so you can change the genome in a different place than where you intended. You get on-target errors, so you change it in the place where you intended, but you don't change it the way you intended to. You can get unexpected effects of intended changes. So genes often do more than one thing. And we might know what one thing it does, but we don't know what else it's involved in. So, you can actually make the molecular change you intended, but something else happens. And then even if all those things have gone exactly as you intended, you can get unintended consequences in the field, because nature's complicated like that. As any farmer will know, anyone involved in growing at all. Okay, the other element here is patents. So, you have to consider corporate control of the food chain. So there's patents on techniques, there's patents on products, and those are already being taken up by huge corporations. And then you need to think about how it's used, what those applications do, and what they do is they support industrial farming. That's partly because of the patents, but also GM thinking is about monoculture. You know, it's about making the very best potato and growing only that potato. It's about trait-based solutions to systemic problems. And also it's got the exact same unfulfilled promises and the same actual applications as the original forms of GM. The first two gene edited crops in the field are, you know, a weed killer friendly oilseed rape and a soybean that's been designed to allow repeat frying in the fast food industry. So this stuff isn't tackling climate change. So I will zip on to the government. So some friendly faces there. I've said government policy on GM is a direct threat. I've got Boris Johnson there because on his first day as Prime Minister, he announced that he was going to liberate the UK's extraordinary bioscience sector from anti-genetic modification rules. And this is being portrayed as a big Brexit win. It is a test case for broader deregulation. This isn't just about GM. And the thing you have to bear in mind is all these techniques are legal. You can do them, but they are regulated. And that's where George Eustace comes in, so standing by his DEFRA sign. He held a consultation earlier this year around changing the rules on genome editing. And in September, he announced, sorry, the 29th of September, just a couple of weeks ago, he announced that he's going to make the use of genetic, sorry, I'll read this properly to get his words correct, use of gene editing technologies to be enabled to help better protect the environment. That was the headline they announced. Now, I interpret what they announced was that they're going to swap the safety net of proper public protections for our high-tech free-for-all because they want to deregulate. This isn't about whether it's legal or not, it's about having no special regulation on these new techniques. About 9 hours after his announcement, they announced the results of the consultation, which showed that 2/3 or around 2/3 of submissions hadn't been counted. And of those that were, 88% of individuals and 64% of businesses said, don't do that thing. That thing that you said in your consultation you might want to do, don't do it. And guess what? They're doing it. So the process by which they're doing it is particularly problematic, and we can get into that maybe in questions if there's time. I don't want to run on too much. But just to explain why there's also that report picture with the Union Jack on it, that is the Task Force on Innovation, Growth and Regulatory Reform. This is something that was led by Ian Duncan Smith. And one of their recommendations was that the UK government should actively support research into commercial adoption by UK farmers and growers of gene-edited crops. So they were supposed to look at Brexit wins, how we can make the UK work better, and their positioning is, well, we need to have more of this stuff. So they're not trying to solve a problem. The problem they're trying to solve is that they want to do this, and the regulations are making it a little bit harder than they would like. So there is an ideological approach going on here. There's lots of other stuff in policy that I could get into, but I do want to, if I'm all right for time, to just get into a little bit of why it's time to get involved. So I could talk about this for hours. So I think the first thing to be obvious, it will affect you. DEFRA have absolutely no plans for managing coexistence. Stephen Jacobs, who's sat at the front here from Organic Farmers and Growers, has been asking them regularly, sends the same email regularly, and they come back going, no, we haven't quite sorted that out yet. They have absolutely nothing ready. If there are trials of these new GM crops that are not regulated, there won't be any containment measures and they won't be monitored. It will be down to the researchers to decide whether or not to bother with those. There'll be no rule to require it. And they're also testing what they can get away with. This is the change that's going to happen immediately is around field trials, but they want, the government is absolutely pushing to deregulate all forms of genetic modification. So it is very much the start of a very fast flowing river of change. What I want to ask everybody in the room to do is ask your organisations and networks to speak up, to join in. We need as many voices as possible. You can do that by joining GM Freeze. You can ask me to come and speak at your events. You know, I'm happy to share resources. I've got some things. I've got bits of paper that you can come and get from me. But also, you know, just ring me up. Let's just have a discussion. I'm available and here to advise and support those who aren't happy about what's going on. I'd also urge you, please be careful about the language that you use, the language and the images. I talked, you know, about the way that language has been used to control the debate. But, you know, it's also down to things like metaphors. People talk about CRISPR as genetic scissors. It's not scissors. It's really not. And saying that all creates a culture of acceptance. So, you know, think carefully about what's happening. What they're doing is mutilating DNA. They're not editing something. It's not a safe little thing that's just the same as what you do at home. And I'm actually going to be publishing some stuff very soon that gives you some really specific guidelines. I'm sorry, it's not on the website ready for me to flash up in front of you right now, which would have been the good thing to do. But I think kind of the immediate thing to facilitate all of that is at least join our email list. So it's a very easy web address, gmfreeze.org/emails, or just gmfreeze.org and you'll find it. Get involved, please speak up, because we need the voices of those who will be most affected in order to be heard. Thank you. Now I will try and do the technical thing. Slick operation yet again.
Instructions.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
We've all spent so long on Zoom, we've forgotten how to do these things.
Oh, that's right there. Wait. I think if I just, there you are.
I saw that was the title on the website, so I thought I'd better use the same title. That's really what we're saying, is that there are obviously huge challenges and there are opportunities. So that's what I'm going to focus on now. I'm part of Gaia Foundation Seed Sovereignty campaign. I'm the coordinator for Northern England. I will use this. That's me, Charlie Gray. I will have my contact details on the slide later on, and I'll leave that up at the end if anyone wants to get more involved with the Seed Sovereignty programme in different ways. I'm also part of a community, like a land permaculture centre. So I'm a community grower, and I'm sort of fairly recent into seed saving myself. But I'm helping to coordinate bringing trainers and experts in so that we can share the knowledge that's already here. Now, let me see. There, yes. Okay, so I like to do things very simple. Who, what, where, you know, the simple questions. So who is this for? This is for anybody who's here, farmers, market gardeners, anyone that's growing. We support small-scale commercial production as well as community. So we do that in different ways, and I'll share the website later on, and you can see which ways you want to get involved. We are a programme for UK and Ireland, and that's very important. Especially at the moment, there are changes, and we are getting legal advice and working with, the Seed Sovereignty Programme has representation, working with lawyers, looking at the new guidance from DEFRA. So if you need advice, that kind of thing, it's a broad programme. I'll talk about all the different ways we can support. So really, this is really saying that the seed has to be in everybody's hands, open pollinated seed. That's really the answer. That's what we're trying to say. This is the missing link to get the kind of food systems that we want, the agroecological systems that we want. So what kind of seeds are we talking about? Open pollinated seed, yes. We're talking about vegetables and grains, depending on the expertise in different areas. My counterparts, there are coordinators in the southwest, south of England, in Wales, in Scotland and Ireland as well. And there's Sinead, the programme coordinator. So there's 7 of us working regionally. That's also really important. We need to network regionally. And yeah, so some people are more focused on vegetables or more focused on grains, depending on, you know, the need and the expertise, but obviously we'd like to grow all of that. So some of you may have seen a film about Llafyrni, I hope I'm saying that correctly. That's about the Wales seed network that are producing and sharing oat seeds. And in Scotland, people are working on bear barley, for example. So whatever your interest and passion, like Kate was saying, if there's one thing that you save, that helps to generate more resilience, you know, for yourself and for your region. Yeah, we do look at what might be called heritage. I know some people have been raising the issue of problematic language, and some of these might be terms that we start to look at as well. But heritage and landrace, you know, there's an amazing couple and a woman, they're master horticulturalists, and they're looking at a land bean race, for example, for the damp north-facing slope where they live and work in West Yorkshire. So, you know, people are doing very innovative things, as we all know. So it's about highlighting and raising the profile of all the different things people are doing. Yeah, varieties that are adapted to our bioregions and climates. You know, we owe a huge debt, talking about the millennia of seed saving that people have done across the globe. Most of our seeds, you know, have come from elsewhere. We wouldn't have a very diverse food system without it. You know, so looking at different varieties, understanding that heritage as well. And we also looking, you know, we support anyone that's breeding new varieties and cultivars. So again, my friends in West Yorkshire, they're looking at blight-resistant potatoes and tomatoes. They're not using gene editing. They're doing their own techniques, and they're doing it. And there will be a blight-resistant tomato available in Yorkshire very soon. I'm very confident of that because I know them and I know that it's going really well. So yeah. So where are we working? We support people who are working on farms, market gardens. You know, people are saving seed in polytunnels. That's very important if you're in Northern England, Scotland, or Wales, or Ireland. You know, and probably in Southern England as well. We need the cover to be able to produce seed, but we also need to look at the varieties that might work outdoors. This is a visit that we've just had this year to the seed co-op. At the moment, they're the furthest north kind of, you know, large, small scale seed producer, if you like, of open pollinated seed. We really need companies in Northern England. We need companies in Scotland and Ireland as well. So if you feel inspired, talk to us. You know, if you're already saving seeds that work regionally for you and for people near you, talk to us. We can support you through the programme. This year, Sue Stickland and Katie Hastings, our regional coordinator in Wales, they set up the Wales Seed Hub. So they've just started selling seeds there as well, not far from Kate. You know, so people are moving and we need to keep this going. Yeah. So like Kate was saying, since the beginning of agriculture, well, prior to that, people were saving seeds and moving around. You know, the rainforests aren't pristine. They are landscapes that people have intervened in and created their own food systems. You know, humans eat what they eat, and people have always moved there crops around, even if they were, nomadic. But since the beginning of agriculture, obviously people have been saving their own seed. That is a long time. And it is only 150 years since we've had seed companies, really. So it's really the financial system, the commercialization of seed that we're kind of catching up with. And so we do need the companies. We do need to do this commercially, because we won't be any competition at the moment for the problems that we're facing if we don't take this seriously. Like I said, Gaia does have representation. The Seed Sovereignty Programme does have representation. Sinead, the programme manager, she's part of a group that's looking at the legislation for people who are selling seed. So if you are a small-scale commercial producer, how do you get your head around the legislation? So there is support for that. At the moment, it is sort of roughly 80% that we import seeds, for organic growing in the UK. And very, very little of what we are growing is from this part of the world. So in Yorkshire, I'm buying my seeds from Real Seeds, Vital Seeds. These companies are essential. We need some in Manchester and in Lancashire and in Yorkshire. We need them, across the lands. So the Seed Sovereignty Programme has been going already, I think, 3 years. Lawrence might be able to correct me. And I joined it last year, and there's another 3 years. So we're here for a while, and we hope possibly we'll be here longer as well to support. And if we're not, that hopefully that means you're already doing, a lot more seed production. So the seed co-op, like I mentioned before, they're in Lincolnshire, Spalding. Amazing place, and already producing a lot of seed, has a lot more potential, quite a lot of land, but we need a lot. So please support them. They're a community benefit society. You can become a member. I think most of these reasons have been covered, or you already, you'll be fully aware of them. But I think for me, I would like to feel more like the French. Their food is just so important to them. I'm lucky enough to have lived there for a couple of years, and I think that the farmers are always first in the protests. They come out in force, and I think we just need to try to remember that it is in our DNA, it's in our genes to connect to our culture, to our community, to share food. And so really sharing seeds is part of that. Right, I don't know how long I've talked for, probably far too long. But yeah, so how are we doing it? That's really important. Will you tell me the time, someone? So it's 20. Okay, yeah, I do really want at least 15 minutes for questions or comments, because it's really important. So I'll just finish off. But yeah, the key things are for the Seed Sovereignty Programme. How can we support you? How can we be, what are we doing, and how can you get involved? So we're helping to reconnect networks across UK and Ireland. We have a map on the Seed Sovereignty website. I'll put that up at the end. Have a look on the website. If you don't immediately think it's easy to use, or you'd like to change something, tell us. If you think it's it's useful, tell us. Hopefully you can find what you need to find. If you can't, ask us. So it's got a map, it's got, hopefully it's got seed companies local to you. If you can see something missing, please tell us. We offer training. So each of the regional coordinators, and it's deliberately regional, we're offering intro and intermediate courses. They were online over the last year. So if you'd like to do more seed saving, come and join us. Hopefully, as time goes on, they'll be in person. We have a seed forum that's a bi-monthly, so every other month we have a seed forum for community seed saving, for inspiration, you know, to hear ideas. If you've got a topic that you'd like to hear more about, like setting up a seed library or something like that, we do support commercial growers. We also know it's important that we have a culture of seed saving and sharing. And there is overlap, and those communities need to inspire each other as well. And we have, very importantly, a seed gathering coming up in just less than 2 weeks. And if you sign up by 2 days, the 15th, you will get a goodie bag sent out to you with some inspiring bits and pieces. So so please sign up for that. We have Vandana Shiva's giving our keynote speech. If you're not already inspired to save seed, I think she'll certainly do the job. And then, we do have a seed week in January. So if you're already doing things and you want to shout about it, that is also a good time to get involved. I think I've mentioned the rest really. And so there's our website, and the Northern Seed Sovereignty Network is online on all the social media there. That's my email address. If you're not in Northern England, then there are regional coordinators that you can reach out to as well. I think. Oh yeah, the seed gathering, just to give you a little bit more information in case that wasn't enough. Here's the sessions, so you can hopefully see something that jumps out at you straight away. Okay. And that's David at the Seed Co-op with his Ailsa Craig tomatoes crop. So, I didn't say welcome to everyone online, and I'm aware that people online can also, I think, ask questions. Maybe there are questions. Okay, fantastic. And if anyone here wants to ask a question, there is a roaming mic, so you can address your question to any of the panelists or to any of us.
Sorry.
Right, so the first one is for you, Lynn. It says, can we file a mass complaint for them to ignore the people's opinions and petition against it? So this is the consultation, I'm guessing.
Okay. I think.
Sorry. Yeah, the question was, can we file a mass complaint for them to ignore the people's opinion and petition against it? Otherwise, what's the point in asking the people? And then a subsequent comment, is COP26 a chance to file a mass complaint or not?
Okay, right, thanks. This one's working. Yes, hurrah, magical. There's a small group of NGOs that were all involved in encouraging and supporting people to engage with the consultation. And we are having a discussion about what we can do. So there will be something happening. To be perfectly honest, resources is the big problem. It is possible to bring a judicial review against a government consultation. And that would be a really interesting route, but GM Freeze is tiny. It's me and a 2-day-a-week admin person, and the other organisations are either involved, also either tiny or are covering a very broad range of work. So what we really need is a lawyer who will help us for free, and mass support, or to be perfectly honest, a large sum of money to allow us to pay a lawyer. So I think we're restricted by resources rather than by energy and enthusiasm for objecting. What's interesting on that, though, is that the government is not required to consult. The consultation clearly was a tick box exercise, which we can see because people ticked what they consider to be the wrong box, and are now, so now they're ignoring it. So I think there's a balance on how much we should do that versus maybe addressing the process that the government is going to use to try and change the law. There are discussions ongoing. Anybody who's online or in the room who has any expertise in that area, please make yourself known. My email address is phenomenally simple, liz@gmfreeze.org. Get in touch, because we do need those resources, but I think expertise would also be really helpful on those mechanisms. CoOp, I think, is more difficult. My priority for CoOp is that we don't allow GM to be presented as a false solution, or to be presented as a solution, because it is not a solution. There are absolutely no known, almost ready, gene-edited crops that will address climate change. That's not happening. That's a kind of pie in the sky notion, as it was with first generation GM 20, 30 years ago, that, in theory, hypothetically, changing the genome could do almost anything. And my answer to that is always, show me it when you've got it. Don't use hypothetical potential to change the regulations on what's really available right now, because what's really available right now has nothing to do with addressing climate change. So I think it's kind of stopping the presentation of genome editing as a solution to climate change that would really matter there. And obviously seed saving is.
There is another question as well, which possibly Kate is, what's a landrace?
So a landrace is essentially, it is broader than a variety. So it is a population. There's actually a definition. Stephen, do you happen to know the technical definition? You probably do.
There isn't a technical definition. Well, there are umpteen different technical definitions. A landrace is something that has evolved to that area. So one of the problems that we've got with these different definitions is that, so for instance, as chair of the Welsh Grain Forum, I can say we've got a landrace. It's called a Hain Gymro, which means Old Welsh. It's the oldest wheat in Wales. It was first collected in 1919 by what was then the Aberystwyth Plant Breeding Institute. And actually, we think it's a collection of landraces. So it's, cereals are different to veg, but I would imagine your varieties will adapt to where they are.
Yeah. So there's this wonderful acronym called OHM, which we all talk about, Organic Heterogeneous Material. And we sometimes refer to them as constructed landraces. So a variety, so there's almost a spectrum of how much diversity you capture within your planting material. So an F1 is very, very, very narrow. They're all the same. There's no diversity. You then get an open pollinated variety, which has some diversity within it, but within quite narrow bounds. So essentially, all your peppers will look the same. All your kale will look the same. And then you get landraces, which are traditional groupings of genetic material that are grown together. And then in the States, they're often called grexes. So it's broader than a variety. It'll be a population of kale that you plant. And so you capture a lot of diversity in the field, which is great in terms of it's the opposite of GM. It's solving the problems of disease and climate change through diversity. And it's just a fantastic solution. We actually have some of those. We do a population amaranth, a couple of population amaranths. Amaranth not necessarily being great in the UK. We have population amaranths, which work really well. So yeah, Grex is a nice term, because I know there's issues about the term landrace, but Grex is a good one. Okay.
I have a follow-up question then, because I'm a fledgling vegetable grower with your very excellent seeds. If I save those seeds, which I'm too much of a klutz to be able to do, but if I did they start reverting to something else, or?
So reversion is a completely unhelpful term here. When you save seeds, so again, it's all about a spectrum. So plant breeding is over here, and seed saving is over here. So with seed saving, if you're doing classical seed saving, you are working to keep your variety within those narrow bounds that it is in. Conventional plant breeding, you're aiming to use your material to create something. If you are seed saving, for example, in the north, or because you have a particular need, you can guide your population to meet your needs. So, for example, it would be the same as your blight-resistant tomatoes. So I have varieties, and the population amaranth is a good example, where one of the population leaf amaranths that I grow, it's fantastic because it doesn't flower until very, very late in the season. It comes from in the Andes, various different parts of the Andes actually, because it's been brought together. But the day lengths are different, so it doesn't flower until you get short day lengths. So, but I've been guiding that population to flower early enough that I can grow seed in Wales. So I don't know if that answers your question, but reversion is a completely unhelpful question. It's about where you take your population. And that's why open pollinated seed and why diversity is so important, because we can guide it to meet the needs of northern growers, to meet a particular taste, to meet what your customers are demanding, etc. As opposed to having this incredibly narrow, I mean, we always talk about F1s because they're very narrow. There's nothing you can do other than go back and buy that same seed again. GM, even more so, you know, you're just losing all of this resilience. It is not resilient, it's the opposite of resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take over asking the questions because I've got the phone at the moment.
As well, is there?
Can I just I'll put, there's two linked questions because they're both for Charlie from online. So I think we're trying to manage online and in person. So two questions. Is there a recognised certification set up as commercial producers of seed? And linked was linked in my head, what seed saving information resource and supplier of tools for seed saving would you recommend? So really practical questions from our online friends.
Okay. It currently isn't certified. I don't know if there are certifications. Yeah,
I think they might mean that you have to register with DEFRA to sell seeds, which you do, but it's quite simple.
Oh, for the training.
Oh no, I think, do they mean to sell seeds?
Yes, so to set up as a commercial producer of seed.
Oh, that is more for Kate then, really. I mean,
sorry, I'm misdirecting questions as well.
I was, yeah. If you want to sell seeds commercially, you have to register with DEFRA to sell seeds, but it's not complicated, and there are people at Gaia who can help you. If you're contracted by a seed company to grow seeds for them, you don't need to be registered. It's the problem of the seed co-op or us or whoever contracts you. If you want to exchange seeds, give them away, share them, use them yourself, you can, you don't have to register. It's not an issue at all.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. No, I understood it was for the training, but no, for selling, yeah, that's different.
So actually kind of someone's just come in, we will get to the room, I'm sure, but was asking about top line takeaways, being able to sell seeds in light of the latest DEFRA regulations and plant passport requirements. So if you want to add anything on that, but it sounds like I think you have maybe
basically, if you want to sell things commercially, you also have to register to do plant passports. But it's quite simple, and your DEFRA people at people at Gaia will help you. The DEFRA guys are really helpful as well. And girls.
The main difficulty is that you have to do some paperwork, and it's only if you have to, like if you're registering a new variety, then you have to pay.
That's completely separate. That's nothing to do with varieties. Varieties is really different.
Yeah.
So there's issues around what varieties you can sell, which is actually not enforced in any way by DEFRA if you're a small scale person. Yeah. They've operated what they would call light touch regulation for years. But to sell seeds, you do have to register with the plant health people. It's all about plant health, and it is actually really important. I would stress to you in the room and the people online that plant health is really important. Don't ignore plant health rules. Clearly they're there for a reason.
Yeah, this is why we have fantastic advisors like Kate. I'm the coordinator bringing together people for the training. So if you've got any questions about training and what that might be, then I can talk to that. But otherwise, Kate or our advisors can tell you more.
Hello. He's there first.
On a commercial scale and maybe a bit specific, but I mean, we grow, we do like veg boxes and things like that. And I'd love to, sometimes it's difficult to access open pollinated seeds, and we'd love to do our own, but as you probably know, like a lot of growers, like finding not only the time, but especially in the north, I'm guessing, I'm not massively experienced, but with the damp and you'd need potentially space. It's quite a lot of time, and it's potentially resources. So I just wonder, is there anything, have you got any kind of answer to that or suggestions to that? Is there kind of some suggestions? Would there be kind of a group system doing it together? Or I just wonder what you think about that.
I can talk to that a bit. Yeah, so what recently the intermediate course visited the seed co-op, and we also visited Hans Steenbogen of Stormy Hall Seeds and the seed co-op. And I suppose what it boils down to is which seed crop, what are the requirements, of each seed crop and even each variety, and then knowing that and knowing what's needed for that. So somebody asked about the products as well. It might be what kind of sieves you need, what sizes, or and then talking about machinery, the seed co-op does have machinery. So if it's processing and cleaning seeds, and they have other people producing seeds for them from across the UK, and and they will process them if you're selling to them. For further north, they are considered Northern England for the purposes of this programme, but for further north, I think there is a drive to see if we can have somewhere that could process seed. And certainly there is a move from some of the intermediate students that really are already producing seed and want to form another hub somewhere up here. Unfortunately, it's a case of looking at what's there and what's needed, and then we're trying to respond to that. Sorry, that's a bit of a broad answer.
So that would be somewhere where, say, if we're saving our own seed to use on our own farm, we could potentially gather what we need to, send it off somewhere to be dried, processed, and then come back with that, take away that kind of manual handling part of it. Is that what you're saying? Sorry?
Not entirely. I mean, you generally at the moment, growers tend to dry their own seed. It's the sort of process, cleaning and packaging of the seed. Drying is one of the biggest challenges, as you'll imagine, that you mentioned damp. That is one of the biggest problems, because a lot of the time when we harvest a lot of seed in the UK, it starts to rain, and then it's difficult. And if having indoor drying spaces, I mean, maybe Kate can talk about some of the drying spaces. And
I would throw something out there. Firstly, Claire, say we've just had a note saying, could people who ask questions just introduce themselves and say where they're from, please? Sorry.
So I'm a grower at Growing Well up in Kendal.
Brilliant. So the things I would say, firstly about machinery and also about drying, is that we run a seed company in Pembrokeshire, which is quite mild, but is not noticeably dry. We are in a relatively dry spot, and we had no special equipment. And for at least the first 10 years while we were growing there, and we were selling a lot of seed that we'd grown on site. You don't actually need anything very sophisticated. You can do a lot. So initial drying in a polytunnel, time your seed crops, particularly in August when those, some of your summer crops have come out, your winter crops haven't gone in, lay them out on a tarp. It is that simple. Or put, frames up in the crop bars and put them on there. When it's that height of summer, it doesn't matter a little bit of shade over some of your stuff. So a lot of it is about using those resources you have, final drying into an airtight screw top barrel with silica gel that you buy from eBay that you dry in a microwave. It is not that complicated. Cleaning and threshing, tarps, sticks, sieves. That it is very much at that level. Let me go back to this point. People were growing seed hundreds of years ago. You don't need that much mechanization. And because it's small quantities, even when you're growing quite a lot of seed, it's still quite small quantities. So that's what I would really remind people, that you don't need anything very, very sophisticated. And the drying space, the answer is tunnels in quiet periods. Lawrence had a question and haven't managed to get the mic, or a comment.
Well, I had a comment, so for the thing, I'm Lawrence Woodward. I don't know how many different hats I'm wearing on this seed question. So I'm part of the Gaia Seed Sovereignty Advisory Group. Other hat is Beyond GM, which works with GM Freeze. Another hat as Director of Organic Research Centre, I directed or helped the creation of populations that Martin Wolf developed. And I also created a seed company mainly for UK cereal production. All of that kind of just background, because we have a big problem. And Kate, I'm glad you really emphasized, the issues about seed. Because it's actually critical. I think, in fact, you underemphasized the problem. There are great things happening. The examples of in the Gaia seed sovereignty thing, there's some brilliant things happening all over the place, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem. Some of us got together in a meeting the other day, and actually, I've got no clue why you weren't involved in it. There is a recent paper produced by former colleagues at Organic Research Centre, which was published in something or other, Sustainability, which analysed organic seed production, organic biodynamic seed production in Europe, with a view to meeting the regulation, which says by 2035, all seed in organic production has to be from organic. Now, the variation is staggering in terms of different sectors. What's actually available, what could be available, varies enormously across the seed production spectrum. But one thing is absolutely clear: there is no way that there will be organic seed production to meet that requirement by 2035. And actually, if you look at what's happening, despite all the good projects, the supply of quality organic, biodynamic, agroecological seed in different parts of Europe is worse now than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, these projects are brilliant, but if you look at the overall situation, it's dire and it's getting worse. The reason I was surprised you weren't on this meeting is because one thing we came up with is there's a definite urgent need to have a task force and really bring together all these different projects we're not going to meet the 2035 thing, but we've got to at least stop the decline. But there's a dilemma, which is that the more you insist on agroecological organic, the bigger the problem in terms of diversity, because choice becomes limited. And we've just got to recognize that and deal with it. So we need a kind of broader base and a real look at really what's happening. I don't like, Kate, I can understand, I'm really into organic, open pollination varieties or whatever, but I don't really, I wish we wouldn't do the critique or demonization of F1. I know you weren't.
No, I was going to say, I think that's actually, F1s have their place. It's
exactly.
Just we're talking, it's.
Exactly. F1s have their place, and they really have to have a place, and we have to recognize it and decide what that place is.
Yeah.
Because you can have diversity within the farming system using F1s. So we've got to recognize that, but we really do need to get together. And the final thing, wearing my Beyond GM hat, is Liz made the point about DEFRA have got no clue about coexistence, about differentiation and so on. But the worst thing and the real threat is some forms of genome editing, which may well get passed without any regulation, without any transparency, without any labeling. Those techniques, a particular type of those techniques, are being sold as akin to nature or traditional. And the biggest threats that I think the organic and agroecological movement is facing against genome editing technology is that because we can't expand our supply of real organic, biodynamic, agroecological seed fast enough, we create a vacuum that people using genome editing techniques can fill, because the techniques are really quite simple, and we won't have a clue because there won't be any transparency or labeling. And that's the real reason the organic sector, the agroecological sector, have got to get behind the campaigns Liz was talking about. If we have regulations that do not require transparency and labeling, we've got no clue what is going to happen. You can have genome editing in heritage varieties, you can have land races genome edited, you can have open pollinated varieties produced with genome editing. So it's a real threat. And as a movement, we've just got to get together with this.
We need to, we probably need to wrap up. No, I think you're totally right. You can't overstate the problems at all. Yeah. We all need to take action right now, essentially. There we are. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much, everybody. Right. Excellent.